the purpose of the presentation is to give you a change of scenery from Professor Wallace. I could tell you with some insight about number 2 on this. Number 1 and number 3, it's really a reminder of just how much is happening in the training of the next generation of the leaders, and I suppose a springboard to think about how that can broaden out even more beyond these 3 programs, and also beyond these shores. I think Henry's going to say something about internationalization as well. So we'll have a little reminder of the doctoral training program, a little look into the industrial doctoral centre that is ID Corps, and a look across to the future for us, for Marine and Wind CDT. Doctoral training program is complete now with 12 studentships. And when you look down the topics and when you look down the host universities, it's a really fantastic picture. So we won't dwell on these, but just to remind ourselves of what has been achieved under SuperGen, under UK CMA, the doctoral training program there, and a fantastic range of weeks. So that was 12. ID Corps. ID Corps is funded from ETI and EPSRC, and exists to train 50 of the next generation of leaders. Now, it's a little bit distinct from the doctoral training program in that, as the name implies, a very, very strong industrial component here. And the expectation is that the students or the research engineers that are joining this program are looking towards careers in the private sector rather than careers in the academic sector. It's a very interesting question. Is if one starts with a blank sheet of paper, one might design the PhD as a fantastic way to train the next generation of academics, but would you design a doctoral level training in the form of a PhD if you're training the private sector, for the next generation of leaders in the private sector? And the attempt of ID Corps is to reconfigure that doctoral level training in a way which supplies and meets the needs of the private sector at least as much, or indeed more so, than a PhD training. So I'll tell you a little bit about ID Corps. If I can get that to go on the next slide. There we are. So this was the vision. So it's all about training world-class next-generation leaders in the private sector. So we create a community, and with 50, we really have that community. I look around here, and it's a fairly terrifying audience, partly because it's got the grey hair of some of the best-known names in the entire field, and partly because it contains a fairly high proportion of our ID Corps students who are equally scary. So it's a consortium of 3 universities ourselves, Strathclyde and Exeter, very much in the spirit of cooperation. One of the guiding principles of ID Corps was that this would be a jointly awarded engineering doctorate. So we had to act as a consortium. We weren't just acting as a consortium on paper in order to secure some funding, but we had to act as a consortium in reality in terms of the way in which we operate, the way in which we manage degrees, and the way in which the degrees are awarded. It's also worth saying that courses are individual components are also delivered by HR Wallingford and by the Scottish Association for Marine Sciences. Many of you in the room will know what an NGD is. You can tell me, but many of the room know what an NGD is, but it may be worth just flagging up our vision of what the NGD is in the consortium. The critical thing is it's doctoral level training, and so there's no compromise on that depth of that originality and that critical review, but there's a little bit of a rebalancing between the academic impact and the practical, commercial impact of the research. The other thing that the NGD can accommodate, which is harder to accommodate in the PhD, is that because these students are based in industry for 3 years of their 4-year program, how many people in industry are really going to commit to knowing exactly what the project will look like, and will the landscape not change in 3 years? Well, this is absolutely not going to happen. So the submission can be by a conventional thesis, where there is a very strong individual narrative, but equally the submission can be by a portfolio of doctoral level pieces of work covered by a critical review. So the first year is spent in university doing intensive training, and the subsequent 3 years are spent actually out in industry. I've recruited 50 research engineers, exactly on target. Notice they're called research engineers, not students. That was our first cohort of 5, and the first of those has just submitted. The guy, second from the bottom there, has just submitted his thesis. So we have the first submission from the programme. And you'll see in green that we had 5 cohorts. We're sort of delighted that we are expected to take in 2 extra cohorts to extend the life of the centre from 5 cohorts over 9 years to 7 cohorts over 11 years. I'll tell you why in just a moment. The students receive a bursary. And at the moment, I suppose the sadness is that the eligibility is largely restricted to UK students, as wonderful as many there are. We are only allowed to take a limited quantity of students from the rest of Europe, from continental Europe, and we don't have the ability at the moment to take self-funded students. So these are areas that, segueing into what Henry's going to talk about, it would be exciting to find routes to expand the outreach and the footprint of this centre. The students spend 3 years in the industry, and the sponsoring companies. The sponsoring companies have to contribute £10,000 per annum in hard cash for the studentship. So this is not in kind, this is real money. They also have to provide the workplace, the equipment in the workplace, and the supervision in collaboration with the academic supervisors. They assist very strongly in the recruitment process. The recruitment process is a partnering of the student to the research engineer to the company. The companies interview the students and the students interview the companies, and David Ingram's marvellous algorithm matches them all up to minimise discontent. But a really good news story. I think there's a good news story here far beyond ID Core. The sector is not uniformly thriving, but the sector as a whole, there's a lot of very good stories and is alive and well, because these are the companies that are contributing, and the majority of these companies are not ETI member companies, so the majority of these companies are contributing hard cash to host the research engineers. And actually we're ahead of our target, and we expect to take in over £1 million in hard cash for the research engineer support, which is enabling, with a bit of extra support from the 3 universities, some matching support from the 3 universities, enabling 2 further cohorts, a total of 16 further students. The programme covers across the disciplines from resources through to technologies in offshore wind, in wave and in tidal. It also covers summer schools looking at aspects of environmental impact, environmental interactions, moorings, and there are also some online distance modules looking at aspects of management, aspects of manufacturing, aspects of regulation, codes and standards and so on. So it's a very rich and broad curriculum. Part of the reason the audience is so scary looking at the ID Core cohort is that part of the ethos of the programme is that in terms of the top material, the research engineers are far better qualified across a range than any of the individual contributors to the programme. Finally, the material is also available for interaction with industry through provision as CPD. The courses are taught in short, sharp chunks of 2 weeks, so it is a better fit for CPD than long, thin courses taught over a semester, and the courses are all IMRS accredited. And finally, the CDT, the Centre for Doctoral Training in Wind and Marine, which is led by University of Strathclyde in consortium with University of Edinburgh. You see these slides were provided by Head of Institute Marcus Miller, who is the Edinburgh lead in the CDT on Wind and Marine. I have the themes there that you see before you. And the themes are coming from both the marine side and from the wind side. PhD projects, I was checking with Robin, 40, is anybody, Cameron, the other, we think it's 40. So you take 40 CDT, take 66 ID Core and 12 UK CMA, that's a lot of training, which is very exciting. So we won't dwell on the actual projects, and you can tell I didn't put it into presentation mode when I was checking and get rid of those transitions. But we are through to here, and so that's he's hovering. So but I think the point here is that here are 65 doctoral level projects, vast majority of which are happening hand in hand with industrial partners, vast majority of which are happening with consortia of university and collaboration. And so there's a picture there emerges of a fantastic next generation, and also I think some tremendous engagement from the private sector and some very good cooperations within this sector within UKC now. Okay, so thank you. Sorry to run over.
This production is brought to you by the University of Edinburgh.